and that's just what it is. So, Zach, I guess I started off with the losers since you did the winners. I go ahead with one of my losers here as I put up the list. I got I got the Bears. Let's start up with the Bears, please. Oh God.
The most polarizing, fascinating, interesting debate show is live in the huddle.
So, Zach, I guess I started off with the losers since you did the winners. I go ahead with one of my losers here as I put up the list. I got I got the Bears. Let's start up with the Bears, please. Oh God. They're not doing Justin Fields good. I'm not really a fan, and I know you're not either, Zach. We'll be here all day. I'm not a fan of guys requesting trades so early in their careers. But if Justin Fields today came out and said, I wanted to be traded, I'd be like, right on, brother. Yeah, go ahead, bro. The ball's of you, but I love it. He needs to request a trade and get up out of there. It's not working. When you have a young quarterback, where you're drafted to is the most important thing. If you're not drafted to a situation that you can succeed, you're not going to succeed. And they traded away Allen Robinson. It's not like Allen Robinson was used in his offense. I think he's a great wide receiver, but he just wasn't used in this offense. They traded him. They didn't even fill that void. They got a guy in the third round that goes by the name of, who's this guy? Velus Jones. Okay, Velus Jones. That's the guy they got in the third round. Guy's about to be a bust. Okay, first of all, might be driving the bus. Might be driving a school bus in a couple years. You got that dude. Darnell Mooney, I like the dude, but come on. Darnell Mooney, that's the only guy you got over there. Offensive line still needs work. You lost a young guard over there. They need to do better for Justin Fields. When you look at what everybody else is doing and you talk about, guys like the Jets, teams like the Jets building around Zach Wilson, I think they did a great job, building that team to make sure he succeed. Even Trevor Lawrence, say what you want about the Jaguars and the moves they made this offseason and overpaying for guys, but they still did their best the way how they know how to do their best for Trevor Lawrence. I don't see the same energy with Justin Fields, and unfortunately that might be reflective on his career. Another team I throw at you, Zach, is the Cowboys. I think because they got worse today than they did last year. When you lose a guy like Amari Cooper, and I'm not mad at the salary dump. It was basically a salary dump thing why they traded Amari Cooper. I get it. I get the logistics of the contract and not wanting to have that receiver that's not always bringing in that dog mentality, making all that money. But you didn't respond. Like, you didn't add and fill that void. You also got a guy in Mike Gallup who I like, but is coming off an ACL injury, which means, to start up the year, CeeDee Lamb is going to have to be that number one wide receiver. I don't think he's the number one wide receiver. At least he didn't show it yet with some of the drops. So I don't see them getting better. I think Dak Prescott is a guy that you need to have the best roster. Like, he needs the Dolphins roster for him to really succeed. And even then, he still fell short of expectations. And that's why I come to playoffs last year, and I'm seeing them losing to the 49ers. And literally, like, the 49ers didn't put up no points in the second half. They still lost the game. That's why everybody was looking sour like that, because they knew guys were going to be more expensive, and they knew their roster wasn't going to be the same, and it's reflective as we have in this conversation right now. They also lost Cedric Wilson, a guy, like I said, that I like in the last take. So they lose that guy. So, yeah, I go with the Cowboys at number 2. At number 3, I'm going, this is tough, I might go to Steelers at number 3. And this for these couple of reasons. Number 1, the draft was a microcosm of the quarterback class and how people view the quarterback class. It's not an elite class, at least on paper, and at least how people view it. And it was looking like Kenny Pickett could have been got in the second round. Like, the Steelers could have got that same guy in the second round. I don't think they made the best decision taking him because, number 1, they could have got him for a much cheaper price. And number 2, I still got my questions. The guy came and shake my hand, bro. Guy got small hands, you know what I'm saying? He wear gloves all the time, as Richard Sherman pointed out on his podcast. You can't trust a guy that's always wearing gloves. I mean, even in the dome, the brother is going to be wearing gloves. I mean, that worries me. And, having small hands, when you get hit by that blind side, a sack that you didn't see coming, that ball is coming out. It's literally coming out. I'm expecting to see a lot of fumbles. And I just think even though they needed a quarterback, I think if you would have took that risk, you should have took a cheaper route to that risk play. George Pickens, I know I had the guy on my list as my top 5 wide receivers in the class. This is before I did my extensive background research about this dude. Mans is a thug, so they're going to have to watch out for that. And a lot of people say that Mike Tomlin is this no BS type of coach. I don't see it. I think he's a player's coach, and having a player's coach and ultimate personalities, that's not a good mix. Look what happened with Antonio Brown. He's not a no-nonsense guy, but he's should I say he puts up with the nonsense, but he's a player's coach. There's a fine line of a difference there, and I think taking a guy like that comes with a whole lot of risk. And right now, I'm not looking at that risk as a reward because the guy's going to be a character. He's probably going to be suspended a couple of times. I hope the guy changed. I'm not throwing negative energy out there or trying to, but it is what it is, bro. It's on film. I think one of the things that you have to do when you draft guys is not only look at their talent, but look at their character. That's as most important as well as the talent. So I think they failed in that department. So that's why I'm going to go to Steelers at number 3. They still a good ran organization. So, we could be reflecting back and them making the playoffs when they're not supposed to. And Lil, you're wrong. I'll take the L. But that's just my thoughts. The Steelers, the Bears, and who else I got here? And the Cowboys are my 3 losers.
Yeah, before I get to mine quickly, I'll address the Steelers, man. I disagree. I actually think that Kenny Pickett, specifically in Pittsburgh, is a really good fit because next year, or this year I should say, if the Steelers would have went into the season with Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, that's a loser offseason. That is something that is unacceptable. But now, even though Kenny Pickett might have been a little overdrafted, I agree with you. In most years, he's not a first-round pick. But I think the Steelers needed a quarterback badly. And I think with the talent around him, and they did a good job adding Pickens, and I have another name I'll drop for you in a second, but even Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson's going to be playing for a contract. Their offensive line is full of young guys with more experience, getting better. Freiermuth at tight end. I think this team was a quarterback away, plus we know how good their defense is. Mike Tomlin could win 9 games with us playing quarterback. And I do think Kenny Pickett, it's not – my thing with Malik Willis was I never saw him play a good game in college, especially against the good teams. Kenny Pickett – he has his flaws, but he was a top 3 quarterback in college football last year. He was a Heisman finalist. He won Pitt the ACC. So I think playing in a familiar place like Pittsburgh, playing for a coach like Mike Tomlin, I actually really like the fit and the name to watch. I know they drafted Pickens. He is very talented, and I think an organization organized like Pittsburgh could be a good fit for him. That might be what he needed. But remember the name Calvin Austin III from Memphis. He is a speedster. He could fly, and I think in Pittsburgh he could be that big-time playmaker they're looking for. I believe he was a 3rd-round pick from Memphis, wide receiver Calvin Austin. Remember the name.
Before we go to commercial, because we run a long time, and before I deflect the mic to you, one team that I also will put in this honorable mention here, and I was going back and forth between them and the Steelers, is the Panthers. And primarily because of them missing out on their quarterback. When I mean their quarterback, I'm talking about a legit quarterback in Deshaun Watson. They should have brought Deshaun Watson home. I know Deshaun Watson's coming with a lot of allegations, but he's coming with a lot of talent as well. That could have changed the outlook on this team, and now they probably have to opt to look into Baker, Nick Foles, or Jimmy Garoppolo, guys that comes with a lot of baggage. So I think by them missing the quarterback, knowing damn well they were one of the teams that needed the quarterback the most, that's where they lost for me. But Zach, we'll be back after these brief messages.
Welcome back in the huddle, Can You Dig Sports Radio. My name is Zach Kroll, along with my guy, The Real Leel, and we are here today talking about our most improved and our most disappointing, the teams that we thought got worse during this offseason. Lil started off giving out his list of his biggest losers this offseason, and without further ado, here we go. Here's mine. I am with you on the Chicago Bears. I just think Justin Fields is just not in a very good position to succeed right now. And to me, what's so fascinating is, last year at this time, we spoke a lot about on this show, Matt Nagy, Ryan Pace. These guys are fighting for their jobs, and they drafted Justin Fields, hoping that he would be the guy that puts the Bears over the top and ultimately let them stay in Chicago a little bit longer. But just the way they handled the situation last year from the beginning, it was just very questionable. The Bears were never going to win games with Andy Dalton, and Justin Fields, when he came in, he wasn't perfect. He looked a little bit overwhelmed at times, but man, like I would have just started him from the beginning. You know that. It wouldn't have gone perfect. He would have, thrown a handful of interceptions. He would have had some good and bad moments, but that's what happens as a rookie. And then this year, this new regime, they fire Nagy, they fire Pace, they hire Ryan Poles, they bring in Matt Eberflus to be the coach from the Colts, and Ryan Poles has really done nothing to show me that he believes that Justin Fields is the Bears' long-term quarterback of the future. And, this is where things get dicey. Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, they drafted Justin Fields in hopes that he would save their job. But now this new GM, Ryan Poles, the Bears didn't have a first-round pick, obviously, and they're drafting defensive players in the second and third round. Mooney, I agree with you, is a good player, but you can't only rely on him. Cole Kmet, he's not getting the job done at tight end. Their offensive line is not very good, and, I like Justin Fields. I think he could be a really good player in this league, but the Bears have just not done justice by him, and they're just not going to be good this year, man, and it has nothing to do with their quarterback, I think, which is pretty unfortunate. His development, it's going to be delayed. It's not fair to him, and the Bears, I think, are in a tough spot. They haven't supported him. They are my first losers. My second losers, Lil, I had to do it. The Arizona Cardinals. We could talk a lot about, this move, that move, this player for this much money. All I know is I feel much worse now about the Arizona Cardinals than I did when the season ended last year, which is pretty bad because the season ended in horrendous fashion for the Cardinals last year. Kyler Murray says he wants to be a Cardinal for the long term, but his actions don't suggest that. His actions tell me that he wants to be moved. And they lost DeAndre Hopkins for 6 games. They trade for Hollywood Brown, the number 23 pick. The only reason they did that was because he played with Kyler. Why not go trade for A.J. Brown? If you're going to give up a first-round pick, I think A.J. is significantly a better player than Hollywood, and the only reason they made that trade was because they were trying to appease their franchise quarterback that's been acting like a drama queen since the offseason started, which is just brutal. So I'm out on Arizona. You know that. There weren't moves made this offseason that's going to make me feel any better about them. Arizona would be my second loser of the offseason. And number 3, this is another one where there are a ton of options to go with, but I'm going to go with the Titans. And it's unfortunate because they trade A.J. Brown. They were not willing to pay him. A.J. made it very clear. He wanted a certain price. The Titans were not willing to go there. And I like Treylon Burks. I think he's going to be a good player eventually, but it's unreasonable to think that he's ultimately going to be replacing him. And last year, it's crazy because Derrick Henry was hurt, but the Titans caught some breaks last year. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC, and their defense had 9 sacks in the playoff game against the Bengals, and they couldn't win because Ryan Tannehill just choked. One of the worst games I've ever seen played in the playoffs by a quarterback, especially for a team that had the number 1 seed. The Colts get better, and I still respect Mike Vrabel a lot. I'm not even counting them out. I still think they can make the playoffs, but one thing I know for sure is that Tennessee is not as good a team now as they were when the season ended. So those would be my 3 main losers from the offseason: Chicago, Arizona, Tennessee.
Yeah, so to quickly respond to at least 2 of those teams that you have on your list, we can start off with the Arizona Cardinals. I see the route that you're going in, so I'm not opposed to the creativity of the take. Even though I think there's about 5-6 teams that you possibly could have put over them, I'm not opposed to it because obviously the contract situation didn't get any better, so that's an L in its standpoint. The Hopkins suspension is another L that they took in the offseason. Even with the addition of Marquise Brown, it's still an L not having that guy. But that's why you make that move for Marquise Brown. Now, I know the argument could be made, as you made it up a couple times. Why not trade for A.J. Brown? I would have traded for A.J. Brown too. Don't get me wrong. Let me make that clear. But I think there's something valuable, as we see in the NFL, with pairing quarterbacks with former college teammates. I think we saw that firsthand with Joe Burrow and my guy Jamar Chase. We saw that how that connection just instantly was just like this. It didn't really take a adjustment period. And we saw how that happened. You also see other quarterbacks getting their guys as well. I forgot there's another tandem of college quarterbacks. Jalen Waddle and Tua. There's even more. We've seen a lot of those quarterbacks with former teammates, and maybe – of course, A.J. Brown is a better player, but maybe they feel more comfortable with Brown, and Kyler feels more comfortable with Brown because think about it. I don't see the adjustment period with Brown's arrival because of that connection. So I think that's where the league is going towards, and they want to make the quarterbacks feel as comfortable as possible, and that starts off with bringing in a familiar foe, or a familiar teammate. So that's how I look at it. So I'm not mad at you looking at those dynamics and saying that they're a loser. I could respect it, but that's how I look at it. Also, the Titans, I don't think they're a loser. I don't. Honestly, I think they still as where they was before. When I look at their division, I look at how their division is still winnable. I'm not really fully sold on the Colts. I still think the Colts, they got better. The Colts got better from Carson Wentz. I'm not a Carson Wentz guy, so they clearly got better. But I still got to see it from Matt Ryan. Is it a situation where he's in a new scenery and he gets a Tom Brady boost, new scenery, new performance? I'm better all of a sudden. Does he get that type of veteran boost in a new situation? We'll have to see. The Jaguars, hello. I mean, the Jaguars are the Jaguars. They're going to continue to be the Jaguars, hopefully with some improvement, but they still are the Jaguars. I still think that division is winnable. I still think Treylon Burks could be a plug-in player that arguably I'm calling the best player in this draft outside of Jameson Williams. Could arguably be number one. So does he give that production? And a team that wants the football, regardless to the fact with Derrick Henry and now you got another dude in Ante Freeman, I still think they are around the same vicinity. So that's the only critique that I would give.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because honestly, man, like the reason I'm so down on the Titans is Ryan Tannehill. And I know like it's tough because they couldn't really trade him because that contract is just brutal. But man, like last year was their year. And I know that's crazy because Henry wasn't healthy, but literally Cincinnati, like they literally had them right where they wanted. Their defensive line, kind of like the Chargers, like I still don't know how they lost that game. Their defensive line dominated the Bengals in that game, and Ryan Tannehill just gave it all away. And I don't know if Derrick Henry is going to be healthy next year. Like he didn't look healthy in the playoffs. It's a bad injury. We know how running backs deteriorate. Christian McCaffrey, like have we seen him since he got that contract? Has he been on the field since he got that contract at all? I think his ability just vanished as soon as he signed it. Like that's a concern for Tennessee. And yeah, I just think AJ is a huge loss, man. Like I think he's an elite wide receiver, and he helped Tannehill out a lot. Obviously, Julio Jones, things didn't really work out there. I like the addition of Robert Woods. I'll mention that. I like John Robinson. Like he's a smart general manager, but I think the AJ loss could count them. And like, not gonna lie, like I don't know what to do with the Titans as of now. We still have time, but I tend to give the Colts the slight edge.
I still think the Titans are in play for winning the division. You actually made my argument even better. I forgot about Robert Williams. That guy catches everything but COVID.
But he's another guy who's coming off an ACL. Like these guys are old, injury. You know?
They're coming off the ACL injury. We'll see how, he fares and shares. But in today's modern day of technology, I expect to see him at some point still producing whenever that point is. And like I said, don't sleep on Treylon Burks, bro. I think Treylon Burks is going to be a guy that we look at and say, okay, maybe he's not better, but right there in the same vicinity of A.J. Brown, if not better than A.J. Brown. Who knows? I'm not going to cap that ceiling on that side of being better than A.J. Brown. And also, I'll leave it there. And you got the coach. That's the be-all, end-all for me. Mike Vrabel's still there, and man's just won coach of the year. So he can coach. Let's see if he coaches his ass off this year. I do believe that he needs to with this team, and I think he will. But, that wraps up our winners and losers of the offseason, the NFL offseason.
Can You Dig It Sports Radio Network is here. Revolutionize the game of media. You dig?
Ladies and gentlemen, I know y'all not getting tired of watching In the Huddle over and over again, so like and subscribe to the channel and receive these new notifications of new uploaded content that will be coming your way. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm out. Peace.